Mona Eltahawy, who was born in Egypt, is an award-winning columnist and expert on the Middle East. She's been blogging extensively about the uprising. I know you know scores of people, Mona, who are in Tahrir Square, probably still tonight. What are they saying? What are you hearing from them?
Well, they're livid, Katie. They're really disappointed because all day long they'd been hearing all these rumors that Mubarak was about to step down, and they wanted to celebrate that, but also maintain that they want the entire regime to step down. So when Mubarak came on and said, I'm staying, but I'm also delegating my vice president, they said, we've got two Mubaraks now, not just one Mubarak. So they're very angry, but they're still very determined, and they're vowing to keep it peaceful, and they've now marched onto the TV building where they're calling for more people to come and join them.
Meanwhile, it's been so confusing all day long. What do you think is going on behind the scenes? Everyone's trying to figure it out.
It's a great question because, you know, President Mubarak took almost 90 minutes to actually finally give the speech. So people were wondering, is it because Egyptians are always late, like we like to say about ourselves, or was there some kind of power struggle going on? People are not clear where the armed forces stand on this, because at sometimes they seem to be neutral, at other times they seem to be protecting people against Mubarak's thugs, and other times by being neutral, they seem to be taking Mubarak's side. So no one really knows where the army stands.
So what do you think the army will do if hundreds of thousands of people protest tomorrow? Do you think the army will move in?
Well, what I'm hoping as an Egyptian is that, I was hearing of a few soldiers joining the pro-democracy demonstrations today in their uniforms. I'm hoping the armed forces recognizes that this is a time to choose Egypt and not the pride of one man and not a regime that has suffocated the country for 30 years. So when they see that determination, I'm hoping they say, Mubarak, it's time to go. We're taking the young people's side.
But doesn't the army stand to lose everything if, in fact, Mubarak leaves the country? I mean, that's a big risk for the army, isn't it?
The army, Mubarak is the army, Omar Suleiman is the army, the entire regime is the army. It's going to be a very difficult choice. But I hope they recognize that the future of Egypt is at stake because Mubarak wants to tip these peaceful protesters into violence. Today's sadistic speech was a provocation. I'm hoping the armed forces recognizes that this is the country we're talking about. They can figure out the government and who's the transition, but just ensure that people's peaceful demands are met.
Why would he want violence? So he can be the hero by quelling it?
Absolutely. We've seen 17 days of this beautiful, peaceful pro-democracy demonstration saying we want freedom and dignity and enough of dictatorship. He wants to push people so that when he cracks down in a bloody way, he can say to the international community, because he knows they're all watching, you see, I had to do it. This is a turning point for the region. Young people across the Arab world are watching and they're learning, does a peaceful demonstration work or is it only violence? Now, these dictators who have basically ruined the Arab world want them to understand that only violence works. What's happening in Tahrir Square and across Egypt is a beautiful message for young people and the future of the world that I hope the US administration is listening to. This is the time to take the side of peaceful demonstrators who want freedom.
Let me ask you about Wael Ghonim. He's the Google executive who was abducted for 12 days. State-run television in Egypt is announcing that he is telling the protesters to go home. In other words, they're using him. What is the real story behind that?
You know, this is all part of this great big state-run propaganda that for days has tried to portray the pro-democracy demonstrators as foreign agents from the US and from Israel. And today we heard that in Omar Suleiman's speech. This is the vice president that no one in Egypt wants. The US administration must know Egyptians do not want Omar Suleiman. And he was saying, don't listen to satellite channels. So this is all part of this scheme to discredit the demonstrators. So what they did was they used this man who's incredibly popular, who's become the youth figurehead, and they made it seem like he's calling on people to go home. He was not on Twitter today, but his friends wrote, Wael has not asked anyone to go home. And just before I came on with you, he was on an Arab satellite channel explaining that he didn't think the demands of the protesters were being met. And it's clear that he didn't tell anyone to go home. So it's just more propaganda.
All right, Mona Eltahawy, thank you so much for coming by and giving us your insight. It's really invaluable.